Chapter 6. A Family Reunion. The pale dawn filtered through the shattered windows of their hideout, casting long, eerie shadows across the room. Rico, Rosa, Vega, and Leon huddled over the worn-out map of the bunker's surroundings, finalizing the details of their attack. Jesse and Jackson had already left an hour earlier to scout the area. The tension was palpable, every creak in the floor or rustle of the wind setting them on edge. Rico ran a hand through his disheveled hair, glaring at the map. "We should have heard from them by now." "They'll signal soon," Rosa said calmly, though her hands trembled slightly. She shot a glance at Rico. "They're careful. We need them to find a way in before we move." Vega, who had been standing by the window, staring at the dim horizon, turned her head toward Leon. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and she gave him a small, reassuring smile. "We'll get through this." Leon, leaning against the wall, returned the smile, his usually hardened expression softening in a way that only Vega seemed to draw out of him. "Just stick close to me. I've got your back." Rico noticed the exchange, his jaw tightening, but he said nothing. He didn't trust Leon, not after everything they'd been through. And as much as he hated to admit it, the way Leon and Vega had grown close unnerved him. "Focus," Rico muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "We need to be ready when Jackson and Jesse give us the signal." Meanwhile, Jesse and Jackson had reached the bunker's perimeter. Crouched in the underbrush, they watched the entrance carefully, their breaths shallow in the morning chill. The guards, covered head to toe in hazmat suits, moved with military precision, escorting a large crate into the bunker. The bright yellow markings on the crate were unmistakable. Biohazard. Jesse adjusted his sniper rifle, her eyes narrowing. "We need to get closer." Jackson nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. The sight of the crate had sent a wave of dread through him, but something else tugged at the edges of his thoughts. His father. He hadn't seen the man in years, had never actually laid eyes on him, only heard his voice in brief, strained phone calls. And now, here, in this nightmare, the memory of that voice had returned, chilling him to the bone. They circled around the bunker, moving quietly through the shadows until they reached a side entrance. The door was slightly ajar, and as they peered inside, the sound of voices drifted toward them. "We need to move fast. The second shipment is ready, and we can't risk exposure any longer." Jackson's breath hitched. He knew that voice. He motioned for Jesse to stay still and leaned closer to hear more. "We've kept this under wraps long enough," the voice continued. "The experiment has reached its final phase, and soon none of them will matter. Not the resistance, not the infected. We'll have complete control." Jesse's eyes widened. She mouthed the words silently. "Who is that?" Jackson shook his head slowly, his mind racing. He couldn't say it out loud. That voice, it belonged to his father. His hands shook as memories flooded back. His mother's whispered conversations, the way she'd always changed the subject when Jackson asked too many questions. It had always been clear that his father was involved in something dangerous. But this? To be tied to the infestation? To the horrors they'd been fighting against? It didn't make sense. "Jackson?" Jesse whispered, her eyes full of concern. He took a deep breath and stepped back from the door, his voice low and urgent. "It's him. It's our father. He's in there." Jesse's face paled. "What the hell is he doing here?" "I don't know, but we need to stop Rico and the others from storming in." Jackson glanced at the guards, his heart pounding. "We need answers. Maybe if we get to him, maybe he'll tell us what's really going on. Maybe there's a way to end this without more bloodshed." Jesse hesitated, biting her lip. "You think he'll help us? After everything?" Jackson shook his head. "I don't know, but I have to try." They quickly made their way back to the others, signaling to hold off on the attack. When they arrived, breathless and wide-eyed, Rico stood up immediately, his hand instinctively going to his rifle. "What's wrong? What did you see?" he demanded. Jackson exchanged a glance with Jesse before speaking. "It's our father. He's inside the bunker. He's involved in all of this. The bioweapons, the infestation. We need to talk to him before we do anything else." Rico's eyes narrowed. "You think you can trust him? After all this time?" Jackson shook his head. "I don't trust him, but I need answers. If we can get him to talk, maybe we can stop this whole thing from escalating even further." Rosa stepped forward, her voice steady. "If there's even a chance we can avoid another fight, we need to take it. Let Jackson try." Rico clenched his fists, clearly torn, but he finally nodded. "All right. But if anything goes sideways, we're moving in." As the group discussed their next steps, Vega pulled Leon aside. "Are you okay with this?" Leon shrugged, though his eyes were distant. "It's not my family in there, but I get it. Sometimes you need to face your past, no matter how ugly it is." She smiled at him, the tension between them easing slightly. "I don't know how you always know the right thing to say." Leon smirked, leaning in closer. "It's part of my charm." Vega rolled her eyes, but couldn't suppress the smile that crept onto her face. "You think you're so smooth." "Maybe I am," Leon teased, the two of them standing just a bit closer than before. Rico caught the exchange from the corner of his eye and sighed, shaking his head. His thoughts drifted to Rosa, wondering if Jackson's attention toward her was as innocent as it seemed. He couldn't shake the feeling that things were changing, rapidly, and not always in ways he could control. As the group prepared for what could either be a diplomatic resolution or a final confrontation, the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting its cold light over the broken city. Inside the bunker, secrets waited to be uncovered, but outside, with every passing moment, the bonds between them were shifting in ways that none of them could predict. Jackson took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. Whatever answers lay within those walls, they were about to find out the truth about their father, and perhaps the key to ending the nightmare once and for all.